Ok, va, ¿ya están ahí los demás también?
This is the night we've spent months preparing for.
So how does it sound? Are we safe with it?
No, sounds a bit pressure, like he said, come faster because it's getting late.
They're taking us into the heart of the Sinaloa cartel. It's the world's biggest drug empire, run by the man known as El Chapo. Our guide is the man we know as the lieutenant.
We're working our way up the chain of command, but we're in cartel territory, and to be honest, we don't know who we can trust. Everyone in the car right now is pretty nervous.
And our guide, in the car ahead, has been making jokes about kidnapping.
Okay.
He may make jokes about it. He make jokes about kidnapping.
Yeah, we should take this very seriously.
We've driven hours into the countryside, close to Mexico's northwest coast. The lieutenant has promised we can witness a large shipment of cocaine. And it's going down tonight.
Oh, look. The police have just pulled over our complex car. I'm not sure what's happening there. We've just gone straight past.
The danger we're in right now is real.
That's not good.
Mexico is one of the world's most deadly countries for journalists.
I'm gonna stay with this car, guys.
Yeah.
64 murdered in 10 years. But after paying off police, our contact rejoins us.
He's now driven past us, so we're all back together in one group, and we're heading to this location.
For the past 2 years, most of the world's media have stayed away. It's just too dangerous in cartel country. And at last, we're here. A quiet hut, surrounded by goats. And there it is. 360 kilograms of pure cocaine. Proof that while El Chapo's in prison, he's still in business.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome here.
In Australia, that's worth 300,000 a kilo. El Chapo's in jail in Manhattan. Has that changed anything for you?
As you can see, it hasn't changed anything.
Tonight, we infiltrate El Chapo's multi-billion-dollar drug empire.
It's huge, isn't it?
From the secret mountain strongholds where he grows poppies to make heroin.
I'm in the heart of narco country. The Mexican army have just set up a surprise roadblock.
Following the drugs as they're shipped to the US, Australia, and the world.
El Chapo.
And to New York, where El Chapo's locked up and facing trial.
El Chapo.
The most powerful drug lord in the world due to his global reach and his distribution network of cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana, heroin.
Manhattan Federal Prison, New York. It's here El Chapo's been locked up for 2 years, awaiting trial for a swag of drug conspiracy charges.
And how's it been the last few visits?
You know, he's anxious, but he's confident. He's a strong guy.
It's lawyer Jeffrey Lichtman's job to defend him.
He hopes for the best. He's very optimistic.
He's one of New York's toughest defense attorneys, famous for the acquittal of alleged mob figure John Gotti Jr. But defending El Chapo will be the biggest challenge yet.
He's funny, he's smart. I know everybody's going to say, oh, but look what he's accused of. Well, I don't let that enter into my thinking, simply how he treats me. He's been very decent about his children.
He's described as one of the most dangerous men on the planet.
Says who?
Well, says the government.
People that are prosecuting him. You know, it's not the first time that I've had a client that the government has told me is the most dangerous and the most deadly and the most guilty, and I'm not going to believe anything until I see it.
His real name is Joaquin Guzman. His nickname, El Chapo, means shorty. He's only 5'7". And while he's now pleading his innocence in court, in the past, he hasn't been coy about his life of crime.
Pues yo lo que hago es defenderme nada más, pero que yo ande buscando problemas, jamás.
In the only filmed interview El Chapo has ever given, he readily admits he spent his whole life among drugs and violence.
Bueno, eso es una realidad, que las drogas destruyen. Desgraciadamente, como le comento, por donde yo me crié, pues no había otra manera, ni hay.
And this is where El Chapo grew up, Sinaloa, in northwest Mexico. Getting here is a long and dangerous operation. Here, drugs aren't just a business, they're a religion. The narcos even pray to their own saint, Malverde. Not quite Vatican approved.
Who is the man they call El Chapo?
No, pues, un hombre muy inteligente.
A really smart man. That's the truth. He has always been and always will be a really clever man.
Our visit here has been sanctioned by Pedro, El Chapo's cousin. The boss might be in prison, but he still rules the place.
As a foreigner here asking questions about El Chapo, should I be worried?
No, pues sí, sí.
Yeah, really, Jess. Honestly, you should be worried.
And as if to underline the point, he starts playing around with a gun. For mountain people like Pedro, El Chapo is a mythical figure, revered in dozens of folk songs like this one, The Boy from La Tuna.
The American government calls him one of the most dangerous people alive and the biggest drug runner in history. Is that right?
Pues la verdad es que el gobierno pues así lo califica, pero
honestly, that's how the government judged him. But really, he's a good person and he helps people. People here in the mountains love him.
And they love him because he's transformed this once poverty-stricken community.
El Chapo Guzman came from one of these families of peasants.
Journalist Annabel Hernandez has tracked El Chapo's brutal rise from peasant farmer to narco king.
When he was 16 years old, he started to grow his own little illegal fields with his cousins. El Chapo, that was just one of thousands of these kids, became this big drug lord.
And this ambitious boy was in the right place at the right time. Soon forging links with Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar.
He was in the moment when the Mexican cartels started to be connected with the cartels from Colombia, with Pablo Escobar. And Chapo was there watching, learning how the big business works.
Annabel was driven to expose El Chapo's vicious rise to power through her own private tragedy, the murders of her close friend and her father.
My father was kidnapped and murdered in Mexico City. Until now, we weren't able to know who did it, and no one is in jail. So this hurts you in this deep, deep, deep way.
El Chapo not only caused grief and misery in his home country, but across the world. How big are we talking?
Ton quantities of drugs coming out of South America, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru. up through Central America into Mexico, and smuggling that into the United States and then Canada as well, shipping those drugs to Australia, to the United Kingdom, to Asia.
And the bodies keep piling up.
And the bodies keep piling up.
El Chapo tightly controls every aspect of his worldwide drug business, from production through to distribution. We're heading across country, bound for the mountains, where the raw ingredients for the Sinaloa Cartel's heroin are grown. But travel here is never easy. I'm in the heart of narco country. The Mexican army have just set up a surprise roadblock. And what are they looking for? Weapons and drugs. Eventually, we're allowed to go on our way. It takes us another day of driving and then hiking across the top of a mountain range. It's all down the valley here, around the corner, to reach the cartel's vast poppy fields. We're deep in the heart of Mexico's Golden Triangle, and this is what it's all about. Poor farmers harvest these secret crops of poppies, and milk from these will be turned into heroin, which ends up in the veins of addicts in Australia. Drugs from here have a big impact in Australia. Do you ever think about that impact?
No, y aunque no esté él, como él dijo una vez.
No, the drug trade is not only El Chapo. It's not just him. Many people are involved.
It's a big business.
Sí, un negocio muy grande.
Yeah, it's a big business.
And it's got big because of the multitude of corrupt police and politicians that have allowed El Chapo to prosper for so long.
The real story behind this is all the people, all the institutions, all the members of the government in Mexico and United States to help him to become this, the most important drug lord in the story.
El Chapo was first captured back in the early 90s. But many of the prison staff were on his payroll, and he eventually escaped in 2001, evading authorities for another 13 years.
He became very vicious in that period. He became very bad, very cruel.
El Chapo became notorious for building elaborate tunnels to ferry his drugs across the US border.
He was the biggest fish to catch, and as a young DEA agent, I made that my goal.
As a young drug enforcement agent, Drew Holden joined the hunt for El Chapo.
By the time that I got to him, a lot of people had given up. It was more than a decade of failed attempts by both the United States and Mexican governments. And Chapo would be alerted an hour before, minutes before, and he would escape out the back door.
Working with an elite group of Mexican Marines, Holden began to monitor El Chapo's BlackBerry phone connections, and he soon discovered an Australian connection. You heard him talking about the Australian market?
Yes, him talking about it and him wanting to secure warehouses for fruit deliveries. When we conduct a raid on his house, we find these fake bananas and cucumbers that they're using to smuggle cocaine in. It's a huge operation. I mean, we're talking about smuggling, these ton quantities in semi-submersibles and submarines, in large boats and aircraft.
Drew Holden knew that he had to contend with the massive network of corrupt officials protecting the narco boss.
Payoffs were rampant to corrupt Mexican government officials through the military, through law enforcement. He really had his whole state of Sinaloa dialed in on the payroll and knew the movements of military and law enforcement as they got closer to him.
That constant stream of leaks allowed El Chapo to stay one step ahead, using safe houses with escape tunnels. But Holden and a small group of Mexican Marines were finally able to track El Chapo to a hotel complex in the resort town of Mazatlan.
We would hit the hotel, and think it was 5 o'clock in the morning, before the sun came up.
And you were wearing?
I'm wearing one of Chapo's black ball caps that I had taken from one of his safe houses that I had found in the closet. As a good luck charm, we drove up into the front of the hotel. All the Marines started to surround the place and make entry.
And this is where it went down. It was just before dawn. El Chapo was up there in room 401, asleep in bed, his young wife Emma and twin daughters by his side. The Marines burst in and captured the world's most dangerous man without a fight.
And I ran right up to him, jumped right into his face, locked eyes, and I yelled the first thing that came to my head, which was, "What's up, Chapo?"
2014, thanks to the American Drug Enforcement Agency, El Chapo has been recaptured and is locked up here in the high-security Altiplano prison. But not for long.
Since El Chapo Guzman was in jail, he very quickly took the control of the jail. He was able to do what he wants to since the beginning.
In his cell, El Chapo was under video surveillance, but no one acted when suddenly he disappeared in the cell shower. It took 18 minutes for anybody to raise the alarm. This was supposed to be Mexico's most impenetrable prison, but somehow this well-connected drug lord escaped, the only man ever to break out of Altiplano. El Chapo was on the loose again. The government showed the world's media this extraordinary tunnel. Built to El Chapo's cell from a house more than a kilometer away.
When my wife texted me that early morning and said, "C escaped," and it was...
C being Chapo.
Right, C being Chapo. You know, we had put him away. It was the Mexicans' job to keep him in that prison, and they failed to do so.
How can tunnels get built under prisons with no one noticing?
Everybody's just turning a blind eye. People are getting paid too much money, obviously.
El Chapo was soon back in his mountain stronghold, but it seemed he was starting to believe his own hype.
Maybe he started to believe, okay, it's not the government, it's me. It's me, I'm God. I can do whatever I want to. I don't care about the government.
But El Chapo's ego would prove to be his undoing. He secretly met with Hollywood actor Sean Penn and a Mexican soap star to discuss making a movie about his life. Mexican authorities tracked phone calls about the meeting and began closing in. On January 8, 2016, they attacked his hideout on the northwestern coast. In the early hours, Mexican Marines surrounded this house in the regional town of Los Mochis. In the gun battle that erupted, several of El Chapo's men were killed, but El Chapo and a lieutenant escaped into the sewers.
The Marines that entered to this house supposedly to arrest El Chapo, that operation was not for arrest El Chapo. That operation was to kill him. The purpose was to kill him.
But while the ferocious gunfight went on, El Chapo and his deputy were escaping through a tunnel. They spent 3 hours in the sewers. He crawled for about a kilometer, then came up out of this manhole and hijacked a passing car. But the two men were stopped by a federal police roadblock. El Chapo tried threatening. He tried bribing. But with so much attention, the police knew they had to do the right thing. So they brought El Chapo here, to a sex motel on the edge of town. The idea was to buy more time before reinforcements arrived. In this room, where he was handcuffed on this bed, El Chapo's reign finally came to an end. For some months, El Chapo was again locked up in the Altiplano prison. Some claim he was tortured.
When he arrived to jail, he started to be tortured. The government didn't let him sleep. I had confirmations inside the jail that at least 2 or 3 times he also has a heart attack. So he was sick. He was really sick.
But now El Chapo was a political pawn. On the day before Donald Trump's inauguration as president, the man dubbed the world's worst gangster was deported to the US for trial. Who do they want the jury to think Mr. Guzman is?
They want him to think he's the worst person ever.
Do you believe he's innocent?
Do I believe he's innocent? I believe he's not guilty, that I can say. It's going to collapse. You build a case based on rotten, murderous, lying, thieving garbage, the case is going to fall apart as well. And that's what's going to happen here.
You're clearly a man who likes a challenge.
I'm not going down without a fight to the death.
El Chapo is 61 years old. After 2 years behind bars at New York's federal prison, he's now on trial for multiple drug charges. The prosecution wants a life sentence and $14 billion in drug proceeds. Here in court, the US attorney said El Chapo was a man who knew no other life than a life of crime, violence, death, and destruction. And now, he'd have to answer for it.
This is good because this man had been destroying my country. El Chapo Guzman was able to kill all these people, to do all these things because the Mexican government protected him and because the US government let him do it, not just El Chapo. Many others should be in that court.
So when you stand up on that opening day, what's your first line?
Don't be so quick to convict, because maybe one day it's going to be you or a loved one who's going to be sitting before a jury praying to God that he or she can get fairness.
Should the witnesses be scared?
I don't, scared of what? I don't feel scared, and I'm the lawyer. How many people is he alleged to have killed according to the government? I can't really take it all that seriously.
The only people allowed to visit El Chapo are his lawyers and his twin 7-year-old daughters.
¿Cómo va a llegar a un juicio bien si está mal de salud?
But his wife, Emma Coronel, a former beauty queen, is a regular at court.
Mi preocupación es nada más su salud porque sé que está muy mal psicológicamente, que se siente muy mal por lo que me han dicho los abogados y es lo que me preocupa.
Well, in terms of the conditions, it's had a tremendous effect on him mentally, intellectually, physically, emotionally. I mean, he's been locked basically in a box 23 hours a day with no contact with the outside world other than lawyers and paralegals, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
As part of a deal with the Mexican government, the Americans cannot give him the death penalty. Better than the fate of many of the drug lords back home in Mexico. They say you can't take it with you when you go, but this must come pretty damn close. This isn't an expensive suburb, it's a cemetery. And each of these buildings is a mausoleum for dead narcos. In that one there, El Chapo's brother, Ernesto. And to be buried like this doesn't come cheap. We're talking up to $750,000. But there's no talk of burying El Chapo right now. He's very much alive, and so is his cartel. In fact, it's thriving in his absence. Now run by his brother and 2 sons. One of them, Alfredo, openly flaunts the family wealth on Instagram, taunting the Americans who have put him on their top 10 most wanted list. Where's his money coming from?
I don't know. I mean, look, that's not something I would discuss if I did know.
Well, you need to be paid.
I've got to be comfortable. Otherwise I wouldn't be there. And here I am, so I'm comfortable. Which
takes us back to where all that money is coming from. to this isolated shack in Sinaloa.
Is this a cocaine here?
This is a fortune in high-grade cocaine.
The amount you've got here in Australia would be worth on the street $100 million.
From what we've uncovered, there's no danger of El Chapo's money running out anytime soon.
Before I came here, you said I shouldn't worry about kidnapping or danger. Why is that?
You shouldn't worry. We're here with the Sinaloa cartel. You're here with me. Nothing will happen to you.
So they've just told me that this cocaine has come from Colombia. It's been kept here for about 2 or 3 days until it's quiet and they feel it's safe to move it. It's going to go out tonight. They feel the time's right, and it's going to be shipped to Los Angeles. Are you not worried about the risks?
Yeah, there's plenty of risk, but you gotta go for it.
So this is the last part of the shipment just packed. El Chapo's in jail, but it's business as usual.
Even if he's not here, we gotta keep going. Whether he's here or not, we're still in the mafia with him.
He's still in charge. El Chapo's still in charge.
He's always been the boss. For us, he always will be. His people are around, we don't know them, but we do what they say.
All packed in watertight 2-kilogram bricks, the cocaine is ready to move.
Okay, they've just loaded the cocaine into 2 different cars. They're driving to the coast now. They've asked us to follow them.
It is extraordinarily rare and dangerous to have this kind of access to view a cocaine shipment. It goes down fast. Millions of dollars worth of cocaine shifted from cars to boat. From here, it goes to a larger boat 2 kilometers offshore, then north up the Gulf of California to San Felipe. From there, it crosses the border by road to Los Angeles, and from there, the world. Even though this is a huge shipment, the boatman has the usual troubles with his outboard motor, falling over as he pulls the cord.
Get it going. It's fucked. Not working or what? It's broken?
Push me off.
And then the boat disappears into the night. Within a week, its precarious cargo of cocaine will be selling on suburban streets.